Welcome to A Pod Somewhere in Time. I'm your host, John, and I'm here with my co host, Matthias. You may be listening to us on your favorite podcast network, or you may be watching and listening to us on the Layer of the Alchemist YouTube channel. Either way, welcome. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing Iron Maiden's seventh studio album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, released on April 11th, 1988. Unconfirmed history has said that the album was inspired by the novel Seventh Son by Orson Scott Card, which tells the story of a mystical child gifted with paranormal powers. The theme that runs through the album has made many consider it a concept album, but Bruce in later years would comment that the concept album concept was never followed all the way through. The album was recorded in Musicland in Munich by Martin Birch. Rehearsals began in the autumn of '87 and recorded mid-November to January of '88. The album was also the first Iron Maiden album to feature keyboards, as guitar synths had been used on the previous album Somewhere in Time. The album would be the last to feature guitarist Adrian Smith, who would later return on the Brave New World album. Although the album would see a dip in sales in the US market, it was received well overall and had a solid showing on the charts around the world. As expected, the band would embark on a massive tour with a stage set that would incorporate the album cover concept. Every song from the album was played except The Prophecy and Only the Good Die Young. Some interesting facts from the tour. Infamously, GNR, Guns N' Roses, was the opener for the North American leg of the tour. It did not go well, as Slash later talked about that they had problems getting proper sound checks because Maiden's stage show was not fully up and running. After just a few weeks of the tour, the band pulled out because of Axl straining his voice. It has been suggested that this was made up as an excuse for the band to exit the tour. LA Guns jumped on the tour as substitutes. For later dates, Fraley's Comet joined, but also pulled out of the tour because they ran out of money. Iron Maiden played Monsters of Rock in August. Besides AC/DC, they were the only band to debut the festival as a headliner. 107,000 in attendance. During Guns N' Roses' show, two kids got trampled to death, something kept secret from the band till after their gig. For this event, special guests included Kiss, David Lee Roth, Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, and Helloween. The show is also noted for being the loudest Monsters of Rock ever. They also did a Monsters of Rock tour in Europe, playing in France, Spain, West Germany, Netherlands, and Italy, with, amongst others, Metallica, Anthrax, Testament, Great White, and Trust on different dates. They filmed and released the Birmingham NEC gigs from the 27th and 28th of November 1988. Released almost a year later on VHS, with Infinite Dreams being released as a single to promote this release. The video was directed and edited by Steve Harris himself, with Martin Birch doing the sound mix. All right, Matthias, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. What are your thoughts and memories of this record?
Well, I have very dear memories of this very album, and I would say that it's still one of my favorite albums. Um, at the time, I remember there was this radio show. Radio back then in Sweden was only like national radio. There were no commercial radio stations whatsoever. So Swedish Radio Broadcasting Company had this rock show called Rock Box, where they played music of the harder kind, and they had a sort of a preview of the album a few days prior to the release of the album, and they had an interview with Bruce as well. I think they played like Moonchild, Evil That and Do, and one more, maybe The Clairvoyant or something. Uh, and So that was sort of my introduction. I knew the album was coming, and I was eagerly awaiting its release. At the time, I bought almost all my records, my vinyls, from a store in Växjö, not that far away from where I lived. And by this time, 14 years old, I have heard of Japanese editions being like the best records. So I thought to myself that I want this on a Japanese edition. So I talked to Johan at Sin City Records, the record store, and asked him, could you find an import of this album to for me to buy? So I actually had to wait like a couple of months before I had my own copy of the album. But luckily, friends of mine, since there were a few Maiden fans my age and friends of mine who bought the album very early on. So I taped it. So for the first couple of months, I listened to it almost exclusively on my taped copy of the album. But I mean, I just love this album to bits. I at the time thought it was very different. It sounded a bit different. It looked a bit different with the cover, with the bright the the bright blue cover and the eyes and everything, which was very unusual for heavy metal albums to look that way. Uh, and I sort of enjoyed that. I thought that was really, really cool. And yeah, I liked it. I liked it still. But there is one song that we will talk about soon that was my very least Maiden favorite Maiden song for years, actually. I've come to sort of accept it by now as a grown up. But back then, I wouldn't say hated it, but I really didn't like it at all. That's for sure. But how about you, Jan? What was your first impression of Seven Son of a Seven Son?
For me, and I've discussed this on my YouTube channel and in other podcasts that I've done, and I may have even alluded to it on here, that for some context of my age, I was in high school from 1984 and graduated in 1988. And I often describe what I call my years away from heavy metal, which sort of coincided with when I was in college, which was I started college in 88 then. So I was in college like 88 to 92, 93. And Maiden was the first group that I sort of walked away from out of what I like to call my big six. My big six were the bands that were the big six bands for me when I first discovered hard rock and heavy metal in late 1980, 81, which would have been Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Dio, Ozzy, and AC/DC. I remember with Somewhere in Time, and I probably mentioned this in our Somewhere in Time episode, even though I love that record, got it the day it came out, I was starting to feel some Iron Maiden fatigue, and there were some chinks in the armor of Iron Maiden for me that started popping up on Somewhere in Time. Before that, the band could do no wrong. Uh, you have to sort of historically put yourself in that era. People of around our age, I think, will understand this. Maybe if you're younger, especially if you've grown up in the social media age, you may not, may be hard to understand this or relate to this. But back then, because of you only had what you bought or borrowed from a friend, or somebody made a copy for you from your friend. So, in other words, you had a limited amount of music at your fingertips. So I was listening to a lot of Iron Maiden. I mean, probably from when I discovered them in 81 till 88. I wouldn't be surprised if there was never more than 2 days in a row that went by that I didn't in some way, somehow listen to Iron Maiden. And again, at the time, you only had what you had. So I had all the records up to this, and I just played these albums like crazy. And I remember starting to get fatigued on just the Iron Maiden thing, the gallop. I specifically remember the gallop being, the dun 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 thing starting to fatigue me. And I was starting to become, having only been listening to heavy metal and especially those big six bands that I mentioned, I was starting to long for something else. And it all sort of lined up with me leaving high school. I became a music major. I was busy with having to go to school. As a music major, I had to listen to a lot of different types of music, which was a good thing. And I just started to explore other types of music. So I remember uh, seeing the video for Can I Play with Madness? And it wasn't a conscious thing like, oh, before this record came out, I'm not going to buy this record. I'm tired of Iron Maiden, or I'm not looking forward to this record. But I remember exactly where I was in my parents' house. Can I Play with Madness? The video came on, and I said, nah, nope, just not being interested and passing on it, and just thinking, I'm so tired of this. And I did not get this record. So my years away from metal were approximately late 88 till about 94, 93, 94. And it was actually Bruce's Balls to Picasso that started to draw me back into metal. I got that when it came out. So I did a quick little search here to see. I didn't really even start getting CDs until the 90s, probably like 91. I had a CD player. So I looked really quickly, and there was a CD version put out of Seventh Son in 88,
Mm.
but I don't remember seeing that in the store. My memory, there used to be a Tower Records close to where I lived at the time, and I just don't remember seeing a lot of these sort of classic metal bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. I don't remember seeing a lot of their CDs. Maybe I wasn't, I probably wasn't really even looking, to tell you the truth. But anyways, they reissued the catalog in 95. So when I got Bruce's Balls to Picasso was when I started to go back in the next couple years. I started to go back then and fill in the gaps with the albums that I had missed. And one of the first ones that I got was Seventh Son. And once I did get the record again after my years away from heavy metal and everything, I loved it, and it's Maiden's most progressive sounding record, in my opinion. I know Maiden fans. I don't know if Iron Maiden says this themselves or is it the fans that say this, but this current, where Iron Maiden is at currently, as we sit here in August of 2025, a lot of people consider this like their progressive era, right?
Mm.
Progressive rock era or something. And I don't hear that at all. To me, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is that them exploring that, this sort of progressive stuff with, especially on side two of the record with the song Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. So I very much enjoy it for that, for its musicality, for the slightly progressive elements to it, the time shifts and the weird kind of riffs and stuff like that. It's an album that I return to a lot because it doesn't have the burnout factor that Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, that whole era, has for me, the first record and all that stuff. It's also sort of when I mentally compartmentalize the Iron Maiden catalog in my head, I got the Diano era, I got Bruce up to. I always put Live After Death as like I put Number of the Beast to Live After Death. That goes in a drawer, and then Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son. I always kind of think of those two records as a pair, and I think of No Prayer of the Dying and Fear of the Dark as a pair, and then of course the Blaze albums, and then the Return of Bruce albums.
Yeah.
Uh, so it sort of symbolizes for me the end of the golden era of Iron Maiden, because as we'll discuss when we get into No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark, although I like those records, I think those records are a step down in quality. So this sort of for me represents the end of the golden age of Iron Maiden. I think everybody plays great on this. I think it's maybe the pinnacle of their playing as far as challenging things. Again, the whole side two of this record. They obviously pushed themselves musically on this. They pushed themselves lyrically with this loose concept
Mm.
album of sorts. I think Bruce sounds great on it. I think the production, it's a I do like the production on it. It. Again, I pair it with Somewhere in Time because it has a lot of reverb on it and it has that sort of Somewhere in Time production thing going on with it. I think it's better than Somewhere in Time production wise because I think the guitars are a little bit more there and a little bit more upfront. And I think that the reverby sound to it adds to the feel of the record. So yeah, this is an album that I love. It's in my opinion the last great Iron Maiden record. Every Iron Maiden record from this point on has various levels of flaws for me that don't live up to this classic era. It's the end of the classic era of Iron Maiden for me, and probably because I didn't buy it when it came out, it has kind of a unique place in my heart because it was kind of like I went back and I got this. Like when I started to get back into heavy metal, this is what I went back and I got this. I got this. I got this first. Because what year did Brave New World come out? That was until like 99 or something, right?
2000.
2000, right? Yeah.
Mm.
So I sort of had this like 90 between like 95 and 2000 I started going back and the albums had been reissued and everything, so I was able to go back and get this stuff on CD.
Yeah, I mean it's been mentioned also by the band that the Seven Son came out and that the American market wasn't really all there. They canceled a, a handful of gigs during the North American tour because of bad ticket sales. And and there's even this, I think it's a quite funny quote from Steve where people had been telling him in America that the Americans thought that Seven Son sounded like a very European album, quote unquote. And to Steve, he said, "What's European about this album? It sounds like an Iron Maiden album to me." And in fairness, I think he's pretty right. I don't really know what the European quality, but it's
Yeah,
very much an Iron Maiden album.
yeah,
So.
especially because Can I Play with Madness, the first single, is a
Mm.
very rock, this most straight ahead song on the record. But I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't mention that also. And me stepping away from the band at this point, there was a noticeable drop in the attention that Iron Maiden was getting in the U.S. I'll speak for the U.S.
Mm.
That's where I am. Before this, their videos got played on M. They never got played on the radio, but their videos got played a lot
Mm.
on MTV, and it was just kind of one of these things. They were on the cover of Hit Parader and all this every month. It just seemed. I remember Iron Maiden doing like contests or MTV doing contests with Iron Maiden, like fly. They used to have these contests that they would do, and with the, various artists, and one of them was like you could fly on Iron Maiden's private jet or something like that, but that was the level that they were at. You were just hearing their name all the time. You were seeing them on the cover of the magazines just constantly. So there was some fatigue with it. When Live After Death came out, that video was got played a lot. There was just a lot of Iron Maiden, and it seemed like everybody was into them. Everybody was talking about them. So I think that maybe there was a fatigue factor going on. Also, 88. I like to say when I drifted away from heavy metal, it was because my favorite bands were putting out my least favorite records from them. Turbo, even though I liked Turbo was sort of like my Somewhere in Time, where I liked
Mm.
it, but it was chinks in the armor of Judas Priest. Bands, their looks started to change. We talked about that inside picture on Somewhere in Time, with just the way they looked and everything. And Judas Priest did the same thing. AC/DC wasn't putting out their best records. Black Sabbath was getting really inconsistent around this time period, long lengths between the records and stuff like that. Ronnie had already put out his classic albums and was now, Vivian Campbell
Mm.
wasn't in Dio anymore. It just seemed like heavy metal in general, hair metal was becoming completely out of control by 1988. And we were just getting, the really goofy bands, the power ballads, the everything. So just metal in general was at this overload point
Mm.
around this time. And I think that added to my overall fatigue with heavy metal and with Iron Maiden too. And I think that just in the US, this album was the beginning of, there. You mentioned they canceled some dates on this tour. Well, it would only get worse from here until Bruce came back, which
Mm.
I don't have any statistics. Maybe you do off the top of your head, but during the Blaze era, I think they were barely able to even tour the US.
Well, they played quite a few gigs in North America during the Blaze era too. They canceled a few gigs back then, but we'll get there when we talk about the X
Yeah,
Factor and Virtual 11. But I mean, the size of the venues, maybe they played as many dates, but the size of the venues was
yeah.
like clubs or
Right.
I
And they went
mean,
from
yeah,
selling out multiple nights at Radio City
yeah,
Music Hall to
yeah.
playing clubs and having to cancel tour dates. And it was all within a relatively short period of time. I mean, 1988, when did Somewhere in Time come out? A year before, Somewhere in Time was 86.
86.
So
Yeah.
literally 2 years before that, they're playing wherever they want to play for however many nights they want to play. And within the span of 2 years, they're canceling dates because of low ticket sales. But things
Well,
moved at a different speed back then. Things were a lot quicker.
and I
Nowadays,
think it since you're bringing this up, I like to add that at that time, I mean, if you compare now with back then, now we have those bands, which Maiden is one of them, AC/DC, Metallica. They are like what you sometimes call legacy bands. In '88, Maiden in Europe were selling out huge venues. They played for over 100,000 people on the Monsters of Rock show in England, but they weren't a legacy band yet. But they were a big band, topping the charts type of band. They played when I saw them in early October of '88. It was my first Maiden gig in Scandinavium in Gothenburg. And that venue back then was the biggest indoor arena in Sweden. They also played the largest hockey arena in Stockholm, of course. So doing two dates. They did, as you mentioned in the intro, they did these Monsters of Rock sort of tour going through all these countries with, I mean, new hot bands like Metallica and they had
mhm.
Guns N' Roses. But I think following up that is where do they go from that? Where do they go after playing 107,000 people at Donington Arena or Donington racetrack in England? Back then, there wasn't another step, and they were yet to discover uh, South America. They hadn't really toured South America yet. They did do gigs in Japan, but that was the only country they flew to in Asia. So the world, the world tour of bands back then were much. It was a smaller world in that sense. So it was a change. I mean, it's like you have these you they put out Power Slave, which is a huge success. They do the live album Live to Death, huge success. And now I'm talking about North America and Europe. And they, like you said, they could play as many dates wherever they liked, but they weren't playing stadiums. They were playing like huge, big indoors arena in North America. and occasionally big outdoor arenas in doing these Monsters of Rock tour. But Guns N' Roses being on the bill for being this hot new band sort of foreshadow what was to come. And of course, Axel in later interviews when they were big, like in 1991, 92, and so on, was sort of bad mouthing and talking about Iron Maiden as, the band had icebergs on stage. How silly is that?
Yeah, there's a great quote uh, from Axl Rose. It's in an interview, and it's right around this time. And in the interview, it says some people consider Guns N' Roses to be a heavy metal band. Do you think you have anything in common with a band like Iron Maiden? And he goes, I hope not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because this is something to also be noted too at this time. And it's interesting you mentioned Guns N' Roses because here in the States, Guns N' Roses was just absolutely massive. They came in
Yeah.
and just almost like the way Nirvana came in and just changed the landscape in
Mm,
some ways.
yeah.
Guns N' Roses kind of did the same thing, and part of their thing was that they had this street level kind of, they dressed in jeans and leather jackets. They were more about Aerosmith and the 70s hard rock than they were about heavy metal. So they had this real sort of gritty street vibe to them. They were hard. They were whiskey drinkers. They were hard partiers like that. Uh, they weren't like the glam bands that dressed up and teased their hair. And you got Iron Maiden at this point was wearing spandex, and
Mm.
they were sort of embracing the spandex, and they weren't
They
teasing
were
their hair.
sort of expandexing on their previous
Yeah,
80s looks. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Punning.
And they were dressing up in costumes on stage. Think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what Bruce wore on the Somewhere in Time show, whereas Guns N' Roses was like coming out in jean jackets and leather jackets and snakeskin boots and stuff like that. They looked
Mm,
way more street, gritty. And so it was in a lot of ways it was punkish too, punk rockish
mm.
in the sense that like they're just getting up on stage and rocking and rolling. Guns N' Roses in the early days, they just got up on stage and it was reckless and it was crazy. Like the Sex Pistols, you never knew what was going to happen. Axl might do something crazy. They were dangerous, they were scary. Whereas Iron Maiden and other bands like Iron Maiden were becoming very stadium. They were becoming very, uh, you know, for lack of a better word, like, not selling out, but sort of mainstream. And Guns N' Roses felt
Or even
dangerous.
professional.
Yeah, right. Well, they were like of
How boring
this.
is that?
Yeah, yeah. They were, the same way that punk came out and looked at bands like Yes and Genesis and when, oh, this stadium rock stuff is boring. Let's get back to the
Mm.
clubs, the sweat, the beer. I mean, not unlike Guns N' Roses, early Guns N' Roses reminds me of Paul. You see those videos of Paul Di'Anno, Iron Maiden before they got
Mm.
signed.
Mm.
Clubs with the people right on top of them. It's sweaty, it's loud. Paul in his leather jacket. It's like in your face. That was Guns N' Roses. That was the impression that they gave off when they first showed up on the scene. So in a lot of ways, they were what you just mentioned about them being sort of this new band, this new guard kind of coming in. They were sort of making a band like Iron Maiden look dated and old, honestly.
Yeah,
They were making them look like this sort of pompous stadium band with their big
yeah,
icebergs on stage and Bruce with his Somewhere in Time lights on his costume. And it made them look almost a little bit silly in some
yeah,
ways.
yeah. But it's thinking back to that. I had friends, and of course, Guns N' Roses were on MTV in Europe too. Of course, Appetite for Destruction was a hugely popular album. But when I think about it, the appearance of Guns N' Roses didn't really mean that people stopped listening to Maiden or Accept or whatever. It was just another new band that people enjoyed. I can't really remember. Of course, there are people like this, but I can't remember any of my friends saying like, "Maiden are old. I'm going to stick with Guns N' Roses now." That was never the case. And I think we a few years back on your channel talked about the differences between North America and Europe when it comes to all this with the death of heavy metal, and when the grunge broke and sort of wiped out all the metal bands. That's not really what happened to the same extent, even though you saw the signs here too. But it wasn't really that harsh in Europe, at least not from my perspective, that these old bands sort of got wiped out. Maiden played big places both in 90 and in 92. And even with a Blaze, they played like hockey arenas in Sweden back in 98. So I think there is a bit different in the climate was a bit different between Europe and North America, if that was what we are
Yeah.
comparing. So anyway, I just want to make a few comments on the background of the album, which I think is interesting. So first off, as they were starting to write the songs, Steve was inspired by the death of a so-called psychic called Doris Stokes. And it made Steve think about if she, as a so-called psychic, had foreseen her own death. And that sort of made his mind go. And supposedly the song, The Clairvoyant, was the first one that he wrote, drawing that inspiration from the death of Doris Stokes. Early on, he also wrote the song Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And I think Steve sort of realizing that he had to get Bruce back on board, because on Somewhere in Time, Bruce had been coming up with stuff that the band didn't really want to play or record. So Steve saw that I have to get Bruce engaged fully on this album. I don't know if he thought like that, but at least the first person he reached out to was Bruce. And I guess just because he's like the main, it's Steve and Bruce who at that time wrote the lyrics. Adrian had done a few on the earlier, on Somewhere in Time, of course. But anyway, he sort of realized that Bruce was the person that would sort of get off on an idea such as this. And you talked about the Scott Orson Card novel Seventh Son. I have never read an interview where either Bruce or Steve talk about that book, Seventh Son, as a source of inspiration. And I asked our friend Luis Mariano Rodriguez, who is like a much more well-informed Maiden researcher than I am, and asked him, have you ever seen any interview where they talk about this novel? And he said no. So we don't know. But we do know that Bruce has a sort of huge, and already back then had a library of esoteric and occult literature of sorts. And he got off on this idea about Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and what the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son can do. He also had like a bunch of lyrics from I think 87 or even earlier, that he sort of thought that these lyrics can very well fit into that concept. Originally, Steve had only thought about the band doing maybe half a side, like maybe a side with this concept. But Bruce sort of thought that, no, we can definitely find an album worth of inspiration and stuff to make the whole album about this very concept. And like you alluded to in the intro, especially when he was out of the band as a solo artist in the 90s, he sort of, I wouldn't say trash talked, but he was more blunt about that the album wasn't as fulfilled as a concept that he would have wished. And he has even spoke about that he had a more full-blown concept and a storyline that would go with the songs and the lyrics and the theme of the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. But in the end, as the band started to work on the songs and the rehearse, and the other guys came into the writing process, Bruce didn't feel they had the same level of enthusiasm and was interested in putting in all that work to make a more coherent story out of the concept. And I mean, listening to the album, yeah, I can see where Bruce is getting at. There is a strong lyrical theme, but you can sort of change places in between some of the songs. So there isn't really a strong storyline, but they all deal with the same theme, sort of. If you have a power like foreseeing the future, what would that mean to you? And Bruce said in an interview somewhere that, sorry, that he sort of instantly realized that any person with a special power like that also has a huge problem, because how does it affect yourself, knowing that you have this power that sets you apart from everyone else? It will also affect the way that other people are seeing you, and how they will treat you as a person because of this very gift. And if you, like in the album, have this sort of power to foresee the future, and you keep telling people about catastrophes that is coming ahead, and if you do this, this will happen, people will either be very scared of you, or they will be angry with you because you are meddling with their plans. So anyway, they start to work on these songs, and all the other guys apart from Nico got into the songwriting bit and coming up with ideas. So this is, and they also share songwriting credits throughout the album. There's only 3 songs made solely by Steve, but the rest of the songs are co-writes between Bruce and Adrian, or Steve and Bruce, which is a bit unusual, and or Adrian, Bruce, and Steve. And as usual, when Dave has a song or have ideas, it's usually Steve that sort of works upon them. So, and shall we talk just a few notes on the very album before we go into the songs?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite Iron Maiden sleeves because it's very simple but very weird. I like the weirdness, and according to Martin Popoff, your friend's book that he did run for cover about Eric Riggs and his Maiden art, he had very few instructions coming for this artwork. It was just like, we want weirdness and madness. Do something with that. And so it's a bit Salvador Dali-esque, I would guess. You have the ripples in the water down here, but it's made of ice. The iceberg that sort of floats up above the water. And we have this underneath the ice. You can see a bit of England and a bit of Europe down here. So there's Earth down there somewhere. There are a few things to say, but I'll just keep with one thing that I found interesting is and as always, we can see that again, he has just added previous Eddie incarnations into this one with the Somewhere in Time eye. And but the fire in the head is apparently something that he sort of stole from Arthur Brown. And he used to perform with fire on his head, literally had a fire on his head. And the fire is supposedly standing for inspiration. So it's not hellfire burning in his head. It's the fire of inspiration coming out of the head of Eddie. It's also the apple, which is red and green in color, but it's in a yin and yang sort of symbol. Again, I just love this album. And on the inner sleeve is this one, which I think is one of the better Eddie illustrations that he made. Apparently, the crystal ball here was exchanged. There were, according to Derek, more stark images of Eddie sort of back in time foreseeing the Second World War. So the pictures of war, and the band didn't really think that that suited with the theme of the album. So they had him to sort of. So this is apparently a sticker they just put above,
Mm.
but that is also very nice with the Andromeda, I think, the galaxy. You have the clock here, which says 2 minutes to midnight, and the fetus, and it is, all good stuff, all good stuff.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it is a good cover because they were somewhere in time had a lot of stuff going on the cover, which was cool. This one sort of scales it back a little, and there's still
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
to look at, but it's done in a little bit more of a, just less busy way. But
Bruce said something about that. He thought that he was the one who brought up the ice theme, as he had an old book of Gustave Doré, the illustrator, where he, in his Gustave Doré's illustrations for Dante and Inferno, where the traitors in one of the circles of hell are trapped in ice. So Bruce says that he suggested that, but according to Derek, he can't remember Bruce giving him that idea, but he doesn't exclude that is true either. But as always, he said that I worked more directly with Rod Smallwood, the manager, rather than
yeah.
the band when it came to the actual work made for the covers.
All right, shall we jump
Yeah,
into the songs?
I think
Uh,
we should.
the album opens with Moonchild. I think this is a great album opener. The Bruce and the acoustic guitar at the beginning sort of set the tone of the record, the way uh, it's going to have this concept, sort of feel dramatic feel to it. When everything kicks in, I don't know if that's a synthesizer or is that guitar, like just using the volume knob on the guitar, that doo 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 sounds like a sequencer type of thing. I'm not sure what that is, but that's
I I,
cool.
I think it's a synth
Is it a
of
synth?
kind,
It sounds like a
or
synth.
yeah,
Yeah. The tempo is fast and driving. I think the chorus is great on this. I especially love Steve's bass playing on this one. There's a point underneath the seven angels and seven demons where he starts just moving around
yeah.
all over on the bass, which is just awesome. Love the guitar solos in this one. They have sort of a modal feel to it. Again, Steve like being super busy underneath the guitar
Mm,
solos. I do have to say though that Steve's sound on this record is especially bright and a little clanky and
mm,
clicky on this record. I wish it was a little bit more like Somewhere in Time or something from one of the past records. It's very kind of top endy, toppy
yeah,
sounding, but in this song, he really jumps out at me, and just the whole energy of the whole thing. I think it's a fantastic opener. I love the chorus, and Bruce's delivery on the whole thing is very sort of mysterious and kind of storytelling, and yeah, so great album opener.
yeah. The intro with the acoustic guitar was an old idea by Bruce, with the chords and the melody and everything, of course. The rest of the music is Adrian's. According to Bruce, he recorded this one in one take, and if you talk about performances, vocal performances, is as good as any. So I guess
Yeah,
with sitting as a producer, having a singer like Bruce Dickinson doing this, you sort of,
yeah,
I think we're done here. You don't have to do this again. Of
yeah,
course, he sings as in the character of the devil. He even sings Lucifer's my name in
yeah,
one line there. I absolutely love this song. It's one of my absolute, if not the favorite opening song of any Iron Maiden album. I have been very delighted every time they bring this back, and they have for a few times in later years. And I just love Moonchild. Um, uh, the lyrics and the title are partially inspired by a Aleister Crowley book with the same name that came out in 1929. And what's more to say? Yeah, according to one thing I read in in Lewis's book covering this era, is that for the two warm-up gigs they did for the tour, Bruce had a sort of devil mask for Moonchild, but they sort of dropped that before they kicked off the and did the proper tours. But you can find this, and actually I've seen the photos that you can see in his book. Is I think it looks quite cool actually. But for some reason I have never heard Bruce ever talking about this. They sort of dropped the mask uh, for Moonchild, unfortunately. But anyway, like you say, solos are great. It's Adrian and Dave, and again, just repeating what you're saying, Steve's bass super busy, but I mean that's the Steve that we like.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
more. Wish we had more of that currently.
yeah, he's not that intense these days, but I mean, yeah, it's an intense song, and yeah,
All
enough
right.
praise. I just love this one.
Next is Infinite Dreams. This one for me always kind of occupies a space in the record the same way Revelations does on Peace of Mind. It has,
Mm,
to me, it has that same kind of feel in the sense that it's not a ballad, but it's the tempo is slower, so it has sort of that kind of feel to it. Bruce again sounds great on it. The way he sings so relaxed, infinite dreams, in the beginning, he's very relaxed and then he's up in his belting range. I like the section when it, again, this is also reminds me of Revelations when it goes in sort of the halftime thing. It's not the fear of what's beyond. And it sort of
mm,
modulates the thing. Then the whole riff sort of moves up, even
mm.
though. And then when it goes into the double time part, I love this section because I love these guitar melodies that come in here. They're very triumphant sounding, da 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 da. I always thought Iron Maiden should do something with the symphony orchestra, and I could picture them doing something like this, and that section kicks in, and a big horn brass section, trumpets and everything, playing these melodies and these themes
French
here.
horns going
Yeah,
on. Yeah,
exactly. Like just this whole
mm,
theme in this spot always sounded so triumphant to me, and then the way everything sort of da-doo, ga-doo, ga, it's not the fear of it. The way it drops back into that older tempo is just it's fantastic. So this is another again this whole record, it feels like there's a lot of sort of deep-ish cuts on here, although they've brought some of these back in the last so many years. But for me, like Moonchild and Infinite Dreams, these are just two songs that whereas I'm a little burnt out on Revelations, for instance.
mm.
If I want something in that zone of Revelations, I probably reach for Infinite Dreams more now. It gives me that same kind of vibe, but I'm not as burnt out on it. So yeah, this is another great one, and I just love the. I mean, this is a signature Iron Maiden thing. Just the melodies that they weave inside the songs, like with the guitars, and it's
Mm,
it's just really great. So yeah, I love this one. There's a lot going on, but and I think I've said this, and I'm going to be saying it all throughout the Return of Bruce era, or basically after Brave New World, I'm going to be saying this, that I wish they could get back to this style of songwriting where there's a lot of stuff going on in here. There's
mm.
there's a lot of stuff happening here. There's a lot of
Yeah.
melodies. There's a lot of there's tempo changes. There's
Mm,
dynamic changes. But the whole song, well, let me see what it clocks in at. It clocks in at 6 minutes. It's a long song, 6 minutes and
mm,
8 seconds. It is the second longest song on the album after Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
mm.
It doesn't feel like a 6 minute and 8 second song.
No.
You're never in it, and you're just kind of, oh, geez, another verse. This is them when they were able to write these kind of songs where there's a lot going on, but it's not overdone. Doesn't feel overdone. You look forward to the different sections, and yeah, so great song. I love this. Has Steve Harris penned song
Yeah,
too, so
it's you mentioned Revelations, and I would even go as far back as to Remember Tomorrow, where
yeah,
you have like an intense first track, and for the second one, you sort of bring it down immediately. And I've spoken quite a few times about how much I love the concept of doing so, because as a listener, first you get the rush and the energy pumping, but it is like when you then bring it down immediately, like you have in the beginning of Infinite Dreams, it makes you, or at least me, the effect it has on me as a listener is that you sort of lean into the recording and so, okay, what's going on now? There's a change, something is going on here. And if it had been like two or three more songs of just high energy, it would have been like when you come to the third track, it would be like, oh, okay, it wouldn't be as impressive. You wouldn't be into the album as much as you become when they do it like this. I'm a huge fan of these sort of sequencing when it comes to high energy
absolutely.
openings, and then you go into something very mellow. And of course, Infinite Dreams is a long song, like you say, it's the second longest on the album. And the tempo and the energy, you get a kick eventually as the song gets going. But again, I like to mention something here that just talk a bit about Steve Harris's way of writing songs. There are great guitar melodies, guitar parts throughout this very song. But in the same time, if you compare this, and if you would, let me put it like this. If you were to take away the guitars from this one and just have vocals, bass, and drums, you would still have a pretty large chunk of the music, since the bass parts are very much their own important parts of the songwriting.
Yeah,
It's not to take away anything from the quality of any of the guitar parts, but I mean, at least for most part of the song, the bass is also sort of a lead instrument playing lead parts throughout this song. And I mean, you could say that, well, it's because Steve Harris is a bass player and he writes on the bass and whistles the melody to the guitar players and whatnot. But then again, I don't think it's because he's a bass player. I think it's because he's Steve Harris. I mean, take Nicky Six of Mötley Crüe. He is the main songwriter of Mötley Crüe. He's the bass player.
okay.
Are Mötley Crüe songs bass driven? No, not at all. Uh, you can take Leif Edling of Candlemass. He is the bass player of Candlemass. He writes all the songs. Would you, in any stretch, say that Candlemass is a bass-driven band?
Right.
No. He even said that he hates his bass. So it's not all down to Steve being the bass player. It's because Steve is Steve, and Steve thinks the way he thinks about things,
Yeah.
basically. And I just loved it. I think the drum tracks, I listened to like the drums without any instruments, and just listening to Nico's drum tracks for this is like a masterclass. There is so much of the music of the song that is in Nico's drums, if you ask me, and which is quite funny because according to interviews, Steve said something that when they started to rehearse this song, Nico was playing the song with way too much aggression, and they were like, no, you have to keep it very calm down, keep it mellow. We want mellow drums for this
Yeah.
song before it kicks in. And yeah, he did listen to that and adjust to those specifications. And I think Nico's drumming on the whole album, of course, but specifically on Infinite Dreams, I think his drumming is. I, as you might have imagined by now, I'm sort of in love with this song, and I think it actually was a sort of a missed opportunity and a bit of a disappointment for me this previous tour that they did not play Infinite Dreams. Uh, it's the sort of song that you get your hopes up for that, oh, maybe on this tour they will do
Yeah.
Infinite Dreams, but somehow it always gets looked over, which is a bit sad. I would rather have heard this than a few other songs on the Run for Your Lives tour. But
Yeah.
I'm not in Maiden. I don't make the decisions. But Infinite Dreams is yeah, it's maybe it's even like top 10 or top 15 of Maiden tracks for me. I just love Infinite Dreams.
All right, next is Can I Play with Madness? And I mentioned this in the beginning of the episode here that I heard this song and said, no, thank you. Uh, I will say that now I do think the chorus is really catchy. My problem with the song is it stands out like a sore thumb on this record, in my opinion. I think I mean, maybe somehow this plays into the concept of the concept record, but it's just way too poppy. I hate the intro. Can I play with madness? I hate that. Uh, there's a version, I think they do this on one of those, a real live one or a real dead one, and it sounds terrible. There is someone shouting. I don't know if that's Adrian shouting.
Steve,
Steve, it is
yeah,
horrible. The vocals just don't work. It sounds terrible. Uh, it's even though I'll give it that the chorus is catchy, uh, I hate the sing-songy nature of it. The section that Steve added, the that's cool. I'm okay with that. The sort of the tempo change thing
mm,
in the guitar solo section. But again, the gallop, and I don't know. I don't like this song. It's a shame that it shouldn't have been the first single. I mean, we're going to talk about The Evil That Men Do next. The Evil That Men Do should have probably, I can understand why they released Can I Play with Madness as the first single, or why some record exec would want to release that as a first single. It's the catchiest, it's the most melodic, it's very upbeat sounding I don't want to say pop sounding, but it's made for radio. It's 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It's the shortest song on the album.
mm,
But for me, The Evil That Men Do is also the chorus is super catchy in that song, but it has a dark edge to it that I think Can I Play with Madness doesn't have. And I think it was a terrible decision to release Can I Play with Madness as the first single. Turned me off. It was literally heard it and stopped listening to Iron Maiden for like 4 years because of this. If The Evil That Men Do had been released as the first single and it was the first thing I heard from this record, I might have checked the record out.
mm,
I don't know.
yeah,
This is all in hindsight now. They should have released The Evil That Men Do, then they should have released Infinite Dreams as the next single, and then, whatever, probably at that point, maybe then Can I Play with Madness? But that's not the way they did it. I know I'm not the only one. I mentioned before we started recording that I heard someone on Maiden A to Z, not not the hosts on the show. They had a guest on the show, and he said the exact same thing that I said. He heard "Can I Play with Madness?" and he was like, "No, thank you," and
mm,
didn't come back to Maiden until years later. So yeah, it just really stands out. It sticks out for me on this record. Just doesn't fit, and it's a shame because it's just a shame that it's on this record. It should have been maybe a B-side, or it should have been saved for something else. It doesn't fit the feel and vibe of the record for me. It takes me out of the mood and vibe of the record. I also wanted to say you mentioned Infinite Dreams being this feel change. I always think of like Moonchild is like a theater show where this the curtain opens, there's a lot of people on stage, there's people running around, there's action, there's all this stuff.
Mm,
And then the lights go out and then Infinite Dreams comes on and it's a small scene. It's like two people sitting at a table, or it's
yeah,
like Moonchild
just a
is the intro.
spotlight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Moonchild is the introduction where there's all this stuff going on. It's the exciting intro, and then it pulls you back. Now the story begins, type of thing. And that's the way I always kind of felt with Moonchild into Infinite Dreams. And it's just I won't go so far as to say that Can I Play with Madness ruins the record, but it's just the album. A different song there, I think, could have really done the album better.
mm. I said that there is one song on the album that I actually disliked at the time and for many years, and of course that is "Can I Play with Madness." I thought this, even the title put me off a bit when I first heard it. "Can I Play with Madness?"
It could have
It's
been
just
worse. I just read that Adrian actually wanted to call this what was it? On the Wings of Eagles. I mean,
uh,
that is just Whitney Houston. Uh
I can stop you right there because "On the Wings of Eagles" were so the chorus part is Adrian's, but it's not his words. But the idea that he had demoed and the chorus was "On the Wings of Eagles." And you can "On the Wings of Eagles," blah 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 blah. So you can sort
yeah,
of you can
that's
sing it,
still a
but it
terrible
was
title.
it was never intended to be called "On the Wings of Eagles." Bruce had the verse, which I think also the chords for the verse from an older idea, and that lyric was sort of about the person standing on a bridge, thinking, "Should I jump or am I free? Can I make this decision to end my life?" So it's the first inspiration for the lyric before all the concept of the seventh son came about. It was about someone thinking about committing suicide, and the title of that song was "Can I Play with Madness?" So it's Bruce's verse, and I mean we often think that Bruce, if there's a Bruce credit on a song, it's his melodies and his lyrics, of course. But surprisingly often, I would say surprisingly to many people, Bruce is also a guy that comes up with chord progressions and melodies, and comes with suggestions for how arrangements of songs. It was Steve, like you mentioned, who added the mid section, and I actually think that sometimes Steve adds these up tempo stuff, as we will hear on albums to come, which is a bit out of place, even. That sort of doesn't really add anything to the actual songwriting, but it is just another part bursting out all of a sudden mid song. But with "Can I Play with Madness" being so short, and with the chorus being so overly melodic and you can say catchy, and you can call it a bit too AOR-ish if you ask me. Uh, the song sort of needs this
Yeah,
midsection. I think it makes the song
yeah.
okay, at least. These days, I'm not the hugest fan of "Can I Play with Madness." All the times I've brought it back into the set, it's been like, I could have played something else instead, if you ask me. But again, it was the single. You're talking about "The Evil That Man Do," and actually, first up, they were planning to release "Evil That Man Do" as the first single of the album. But it was if maybe I should have looked this up, but I think there was actually Bruce who sort of was very keen on getting this out as a single because he thought it was made to be a single. Uh, One weird thing I've heard about this song is a quote from Steve where he said that he thought that "Can I Play with Madness" sounded a bit like Bad Company or Led Zeppelin, and I can't hear that
Mm.
for the life of me. Um,
Maybe just like that one chord, like right before the chorus comes in, like after the guitar solos, dun 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 dun. Can I play with it? That has a
mm,
very classic rock feel to it. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I don't.
Apparently, they, even though it's a very short song, they had huge discussions within the band when they were writing and rehearsing this song, because they couldn't really make the different parts fit as well. And apparently, it was Bruce's suggestion that they would start off the song with the a cappella bit, and also that after those chords that you just mentioned, to go back into the a cappella before going
Yeah.
into the chorus was a sort of a save from Bruce, that we can just stop playing and then we sing "Can I Play with Madness," and then we go
Oh.
back into the song. But yeah, not my favorite song. I'm sort of okay with it these days, but uh, next one.
The Evil That Men Do. I love this one. I love the chorus in this one. This is an example of how. So Adrian has a writing credit on this. I guess you can comment on if you know who's responsible for the chorus of this song. Uh, to me, this, if I was sitting there as the producer, I would have said, guys, Can I Play with Madness 2 AOR doesn't fit the vibe of the song. The Evil That Men Do can occupy that same space
Mm,
as far as being very melodic, a very catchy chorus, but it has the tone that we want for the record. It's also what is Evil That Men Do is 4 minutes 33 seconds. It is after the clairvoyant. After Can I Play with Madison and Clairvoyant, it's the third shortest. Uh, I love the energy of it. I love the way the chorus, it's sort of the way it moves into the chorus. I don't know. I just love the energy of the song. Reminds me a little bit of Moonchild. It has that
mm.
kind of like very driving energy to it. Comes at you really fast, really hard, hits you between the eyes. I love the lyrics and just the vibe of the whole song. So the evil that men do, yeah, this definitely works for me.
At times I've thought that it is maybe too AOR-ish, but I think it's a great song. Uh, Evil That Man Do is an original idea of Adrian's, but according to Bruce, Adrian's original version was much, much slower and more of a ballad type of song, and that Bruce sort of suggested that let's raise the BPMs quite a bit here to make get some energy into it. I'm not sure actually, but I guess that it's the chords in the middle, which are Steve's songwriting.
Yeah.
Um, I think the pre-chorus sort of makes the song actually. It's like that part where it's that makes the other parts so much better. Um, that's just great songwriting, if you ask me. So Evil That Man Do, I sort of just assumed that they would play this on the last tour, the Run for Your Lives tour, but they didn't, unfortunately. So my guess is that this is a song that we will perhaps never hear live again, unfortunately. Yeah, not much to say. It's a really good song, and they played this for quite few tours. They did it with Blaze as well on these tours, with Blaze Bailey singing. Um, I like the Evil That Man Do. It's should have been the first single on the
Yeah.
album, I think.
And you mentioned the chorus and the pre-chorus specifically, and
Mm,
you're right, that whole living on a razor's edge, balancing on a ledge, that's just
yeah,
great. So when it does get to the chorus, the evil that men do, I just
yeah.
think that flows really nice. And anybody that watches my YouTube channel will say, hey, wait a minute, you're always saying about how much you love AOR-ish, melodic rock, really catchy choruses. Well, this is an example of the fine line where I draw the line. Whereas Can I Play with Madness goes too far. This is just hits that right spot for me. Super melodic, but it's got this kind of dark tone to it. Is
Mm.
that I think just sells it for me. So I love it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That the song, even though it is quite upbeat in tempo, it also has a bit of a sad, sort of darkish. quality to it, which is a an interesting combination, I think. That's good. Another thing with the pre-chorus is the guitar harmonies, the guitar lines that they play underneath, which is so strong on their own. They could have been like put in another song, like a lead theme or something.
Yeah.
But here it's just a quote unquote throwaway bit that they use for the pre-chorus. I mean, it's yeah, the quality of the songwriting back then was like an embarrassment of riches when they could
Yeah.
just throw ideas at each other and just make them work. Brilliant song.
All
And
right,
the
side
end of
two.
two side, yeah.
Yeah, side two opens with the title track, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. This is great. I love the epic dramatic intro. Boom, 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 ba-da-da-dum,
Mm.
very big. Again, I'd love to hear Iron Maiden work with an orchestra. This is one that I think you could really hear it being bombastic and
Absolutely.
timpanis and everything playing this
Yeah.
intro. That would be very, very cool. I like when it drops into the verse kind of feel. Here they stand, brothers, them all. Bruce's delivery right there is just great. The part where everything drops down and you get the bass kind of playing the doo 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 doo, playing by itself, and you get those guitars, jun 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 jun, in the background playing their thing. And there's these subtle little ahs in the background during when Bruce is talking. There's all these like ah just in the
Yeah.
back that I think is great. I love then when it kicks into that fast progressive part. Diddle-doo-doo, biddle-doo-doo, biddle-doo-doo. Again, probably the most progressive sounding thing that maybe
Mm.
Maiden has done up to this point, as far as like weird kind of lines and fast technical lines and everything. I love the first guitar solo in this. I love the guitar solos in general on this album and in this song. The way the guitar comes in is fantastic. Yeah, so I just love this one. And if I've said, and I'm still going to stand by this, that Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is the peak for Steve Harris. If someone wanted to argue with me that Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is Steve Harris's peak, I would respect that and could see someone taking that point of view, because this is a great song. I love all the changes in it. I wish that in some ways, I wish that the next album after this had gone more in this direction and maybe pushed it a little bit. I would have loved a whole album just filled with these kinds of weird time signatures and weird licks
Mm.
and sudden tempo. I'm a big, I say, it is another thing I say all the time. I love gear shift tempo changes where all of a
Yeah.
sudden the tempo just changes. You get that in this song. So yeah, this is great. Great side two opener. Love this song. Pretty long song, clocking in at 9:52. Longest song on here. But again, it's one of those songs that you're kind of anticipating, like, oh, I can't wait till it gets to that spot in the song.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
wait till it gets to this section of the song. So yeah, love it. Great, great song.
Yeah. Let me start off with my only criticism of this song at all, and that is maybe I think that the chorus and just repeating seven son of a seventh son, seven
Uh,
son of a seventh son, seven son isn't isn't the highest quality songwriting on the album. Let me put it that way. But again,
yeah,
it works. But and another thing about the actual words of the song, it's a very long song, but it doesn't really have much
yeah,
lyrics.
yeah, it
It's
doesn't.
mainly very much instrumental and like
Yeah,
the whole after the spoken word part where today is born the seventh one,
yeah,
and with like you mentioned those mellotron samples beneath with the choir.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I love this song very much. It's what can I possibly say about this song that you didn't already say? Again, let's praise Nico McBrain's musicality as a drummer. And I mean for that whole slow bit with where he's almost only playing a hi-hat. But can you play a hi-hat that good for that
Yeah.
long? and still sort of retaining the energy of the song. It's not like Nico McBrain. I love him to bits. What a drummer! And on this song especially, it's like wow, it's fantastic, and it's so melodic. Melodic drumming, is that even a thing? I think Nico McBrain is a melodic drummer. And I mean the very drum pattern for the verses, doom to doom to where he uses the toms too. Highly unusual way of, he could have just played it straight. Is that Steve's songwriting, or is that on? But as we had found out on many occasions, it's often Nico suggestions for the drum arrangement. That is what Nico plays, what he comes up with, basically. And you could argue, of course, that he is more of a songwriter in the band that than he is given credit for. Seven Son of a Seven Son, the very last bit where you go to it just gives me instant goosebumps every time I hear that. I just, the hair stands on my arms literally every time I get to that part.
Yeah.
It's just great. You mentioned the guitar solos. It's Dave, Adrian, and Adrian. Both great solos on, like, right on top of their very styles. Brilliant song. Love it to bits. Seven Son of a Seven Son.
Yeah, I would
A,
say
wor- a
too.
worthy title track.
Yeah, another small complaint, and I mentioned Steve's bass sound being very clanky
Yeah, yeah.
on this album, and that sort of jumps out at me in the verses. It's almost like I would have liked his bass sound to be a little
Mm.
tighter, so that in those verses, it's almost like he's like you hear so much clank that it's almost slightly distracting in those verses. And I do agree about the chorus, and this is where if someone wanted to argue with me about this being a better song than Rhyme in the Ancient Mariner, my comment would be that the melody lines aren't quite as strong in this as what we got on Rhyme in the Ancient Mariner. But
Mm.
all right, next, The Prophecy. I like the nice mellow intro of this one, kind of after the instrumental intensity of the title track. So it's sort of like we mentioned earlier with Moonchild into Infinite Dreams. It gives you a little bit of a catch your breath here. The main groove in this one, you know, it has this like I wrote down in my notes that it has almost like a Celtic swing to it. There's like the melodies that the guitars play a little bit later, and kind of Bruce's "Now that I know that the time has come," da da dee 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 dee, ba da dee dee dee. You know, you could almost picture it
Mhm.
like I don't know, being some pub song or something if it was in a major key instead of a minor key. Uh, this one isn't. This is maybe a complaint some aspects of this record. Like for instance, when we were getting ready for this, I had to sort of go back and remind myself of which one the prophecy is. This one just isn't as catchy to me. And maybe this is showing some cracks in the writing a little bit. Whose song is this? Who
It's
wrote this?
Dave's music and
Yeah.
Steve's arrangement and
Yeah.
lyrics.
I I don't know what to say about this one except there's some riffs in it that I like. I'm not sure I really like the vocal melody line. I really like the ending, the way the electric guitar fades out and the acoustic guitar fades in. That's probably my
Mm.
favorite part of this. But and the main riff is kind of cool, bum 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 bum, you know. But again, I just don't care for the vocal melody. It's just it's a little bit of a disappointment after Seventh Son.
Mm. I think you could say that this is like a follow up to Quest for Fire. It
Mm,
has this sort of Celtic Thin Lizzy-esque
yeah.
sort of feel to it. Uh, and we talked about Quest for Fire perhaps shouldn't have even been on the album, or maybe should have been an instrumental. The vocal melody, like you say, for the verses isn't that strong. But then again, I really enjoy the sort of storytelling thing that Bruce does in the pre-chorus, where he just changes here the tone of his voice. I don't have to look up the words here. What's he saying? It's suffering and pain, impending disaster. I mean, how it changes and makes it sort of more interesting than I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah,
the
I agree with that.
original vocal line would have
Yeah.
been. Uh, uh, but I think The Prophecy is a good song. They didn't play this one live, and well, I guess it's because it isn't really the strongest song on the album. They still played like 6 out of the 8 tracks on the album. Um, so maybe it was a good or rational choice or something that they didn't choose The Prophecy for the live set. Still, it's a song that I would love to hear live. Not that that will ever happen, but I think it's pretty cool. It's I like you the very end bit. According to Dave, the original plan was recorded with electric guitars, but he's quote unquote wanted a more medieval feel to it, doing it on the acoustic, which I think is great. Um, but not that much to say about it. I like it, but it's not the strongest one on the album. But I think it feels its purpose somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I will agree that I think Bruce does make it more interesting than it probably really is. All right, next is the Clairvoyant. I think the bass intro is pretty cool on this. The guitar melody is kind of like an earworm guitar. That sort of
Mm.
sticks in your ear. I like the lyrics in this one. I like when Bruce sings, "There's a time to live and a time to die." Then when he says that line, "As soon as you're born, you're dying." But again, I can't help but sort of feel like it's another song that Seventh Son sets up this side too, like it's going to really be something. Like, oh boy, this is, we've really got something going on here. And I'm not sure the prophecy and the clairvoyant is I like better than the prophecy, but I'm not sure if any of these so far live up to the song Seventh Son. They're just this one's good. I like this one, but again, it's a little bit uh I don't want to say throwaway, but I think it's a good song. I don't think it's a great song.
Mm. Okay, I'm a bit more inspired and enthusiastic about the song than you are then. I think The Clairvoyant is one of the better songs on the album. It's again a soul songwriting credit to Steve. And as we mentioned in the beginning of the pod, it was inspired by the death of Doric Stokes, this so-called psychic, and that sort of inspired and got the whole thing going. Um, this is a song that every time when they bring it back into the set, I enjoy it. It was also released as a single, of course. It was released as a sort of live single, as we will discuss the singles later on, but there were different formats and live versions recorded at Monsters of Rock, Donington Park. Um, the one thing that I think is quite funny, we have talked earlier about, you know, the usual spot for a filler on an album is the second to last song, and here they have the Clairvoyant as the second to last song, and in a sort of weird way, maybe that speaks about how good all these songs are. If you can have like, it's not a truth, it's not a law, but usually if you have a weaker song, you tend to put that second to last on an album. But here they have the Clairvoyant, which is released as a single even. So it's not like they thought it was a throwaway song making this album. It's Dave solo on the Clairvoyant. I like this one. I have played this song live with the cover band we had many years ago, and I think it's really fun to play on the bass. It's busy and intricate, but it's uh, good fun to play it on the bass, I think, and using all the Steve Harris clank you have, and more so,
Yeah.
even to make
Well,
it.
I would say again, not that I think it's a bad song, but just quickly looking over the record, I like Moonchild, Infinite Dreams, The Evil That Men Do, Seventh Son, all better than The Clairvoyant.
Mm,
And if we want to segue into the last song on the
mm,
record, Only the Good Die Young, I like that better than The Clairvoyant. Really like the chorus in this one. I think the vocal melodies are real good in it. Like I said, the chorus is really catchy. I like that little brief bass solo-ish thing that
mm,
Steve does at one point in the song. I also like, I guess we'll include this in this. It is included in this song when you're listening to it, but the way the album then ends with the way that it began, the acoustic and vocal thing. So I like Only the Good Die Young, although I would say that it sort of reminds me of The Evil That Men Do. It's got a similar tempo, it's got the gallop, it's got all that going on. Uh, it's not as good, in my opinion, as The Evil That Men Do, uh, but I appreciate it for its chorus. But I will say that by the time you get to this song on this record, it's starting to in my notes, I wrote the gallop is getting tiresome because
mm,
there's a lot of galloping on this record. But I could have seen them maybe flipping this, and this could have maybe occupied the space of Can I Play with Madness. I would have appreciated Only the Good Die Young. Uh, I like that better than Can I Play with Madness. So yeah, I like this one. It's not my favorite song on the record, but I like it better than the Clairvoyant and the Prophecy.
mm.
It would be if I would put I would put Can I Play with Madness, The Prophecy, and Clairvoyant below Only the Good Die Young. I would
Okay,
not make Only the Good Die Young is not, in my opinion, not better than Moonchild, Infinite Dreams, The Evil That Men Do, or Seventh Son.
okay. I haven't really thought about it that way, but it is a sort of a deep cut, and a favorite of many fans. Only Good Die Young is Steve and Bruce co-write, and apparently Bruce. Uh, I strongly think that Bruce wrote the verses because he says that when he writes songs, he almost always write on the acoustic guitar, and not that that's Bruce played the acoustic guitar like the one that you can hear on the recording, but I mean the strumming, ding, 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 can hear someone playing that on an acoustic guitar and singing those vocal lines. So it's Bruce's lyrics. The music are by Steve and Bruce.
This is
Um,
another one too. I just comment that it's much like what were we saying? One of the ones earlier that that has this same thing where the pre-chorus would almost be someone else's chorus. Time it waits for no one. My
mm,
future it is revealed.
mm,
That's almost like a chorus in itself. And in a way, sort of the way the chorus then only the good die young sort of drops down and it's lower. You get sort of this like dual chorus thing where that melody there, the moon is red and bleeding, is it's just a great melody. And I kind of like the fact that the chorus almost like drops down, in Bruce's range and in intensity.
mm.
And I think that that's an interesting little little
But with
songwriting thing.
a vocal harmony going on at
Yeah.
the same time. So, like you say,
Yeah.
they sort of drop down, but they also manage to sort of increase
Yeah.
the energy or the momentum by having the vocal
Yeah.
harmony thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah, Only Go Die Young is a really good song. Again, like I said before, they didn't play this song live, uh, but it's not the worst song on the album by far. I really enjoy this song, and it's always nice to hear Steve doing like he does in Run to the Hills with that short. He does a similar thing in this one, Only Good Die Young.
Yeah.
So it's Adrian, Steve playing the first solos before you go back to the final verse, and then it's Davey playing the outro solo, which I think is quite fitting with the everything going on there, because Davey's good on all these pull-ups and whammy bar stuff. And like you mentioned, I think it's a nice touch to end the album just like you start off the album. That makes it feels more like there is a story that have been told, even though, like we talked about, maybe the story isn't that. I wouldn't say it's not important, but the story isn't that strong, and or rather, it's not that strongly connected within the music of this album. The songs are very much standalone songs. You can play "Can I Play with Madness," and it will make sort of perfect sense within its own sort of universe. You can play "The Clairvoyant" without knowing anything about the concept of the album, and it would still make perfect sense within the lyrical content of that very song. And I think the only the Good Die Young is perhaps a bit more than the other songs, sort of alluding to this story. It's Bruce's lyrics, and I think that he wanted to sort of have this. The lyrics is like the end of the album, and the story wise, and it's also interesting that the very length of the lyric is, I think it's the most words for any song of the album, but it's not a very, very long song. Uh, Perhaps there is more words to Infinite Dreams. Maybe so. I haven't counted them, but there's a lot of storytelling going on within Only the Good Die Young, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good one, and it's a rare thing that Steve and Bruce writes together. So I would want more of that these days too, actually.
All right, let's talk about the singles from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
Yes. Can I Play with Madness? Uh, B-sides are Black Bart Blues, which is an original track, and of course the cover of a Thin Lizzy song called Massacre. The cover itself is just, according to Derek Riggs, who did it, just madness. And I sort of agree with him. It is sort of madness. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I just don't like it. Maybe you just grew accustomed to more sort of detailed sleeves than this one, but it is madness. They made this was the first Maiden single to be put out on a CD single. So the B-sides, Black Bart Blues, is an original song by Steve and Bruce. Steve wrote the music. Somewhere I read, maybe I'm just spreading factoids here, I don't know for sure, but I think it was a song that originally was called Highway Road in Time. And Luis Mariano Rodriguez, if you're listening, please correct me. But I think this is the case, that it was a Steve song that never got used. The story of the lyric is quite funny though, because it takes place in '83 when Iron Maiden is on tour in the US. According to Bruce, they were driving through Florida in '83, and as we were going past a gas station, he just saw a couple of suits of armor outside the gas station. So he said, "You have to turn back. We must buy one of these suits of armor," which was on sale for some weird reason in Florida, in the middle of nowhere, according to Bruce. So they bought this suit of armor and they put it in the back of the bunkers, the sleep bunks in the tour bus. And according to Bruce, Black Bart, as they named this suit of armor, saw everything, quote unquote. And I think the lyric is, of course, very, very silly. And it's about groupies and it's about, yeah, it's a bit stupid. But unusual in that way that it's an original Iron Maiden song as a B-side. What do you think about Black Bart Blues?
Uh, when I hear something like this, it makes me think that this is just the guys had to do this because they were touring so much, and this is just a way for them to have a laugh and let off some steam and inside jokes and that kind of thing. And it's not something particularly interesting. There's the musically, it's kind of like a blues progression, sort of. So there's not really much interesting going on. I mean, the lyrics are, back in the 80s, I guess when we were 13, 14 years old, we would laugh at stuff like this because it's, you know, they're sort of the stuff they're like you said, they're sort of talking about girls and things like that. And so would it be funny and appealing to a 13-year-old? I mean, in 2025, do I ever wake up in the morning and want to listen to this? No. But it's kind of interesting because you're just hearing, I don't know, the bass is really loud in the mix. I don't know.
Yeah,
So that's kind of like interesting to hear that. But otherwise, there's nothing here. And it's just the one that I'm thinking of where Nico, there's like the whole thing with Nico at the end where he's like talking in the studio. Do I
yeah,
have the right one in my head? Yeah,
yeah,
where
yeah.
he's like, let's start it again. One, two, three, So again, this is these guys back then. They this was probably what kept them sane, uh, touring and recording and everything, being able to do this and have a laugh and everything like that. And it's, I will say too that even as I just thought of this now, even when I heard these when I was younger, I remember I had a friend that collected all of these. And I was never able to buy them. I didn't have enough money, and I was too like, I gotta get that Judas Priest record. I don't have, and so I would tape these from a friend or listen to these from this friend that I knew that had all these. And it showed that Iron Maiden, they're a pretty serious band on the records and everything, but it kind of showed this fun side to Iron Maiden that I think was pretty cool. And as a kid, I thought that was funny that like, oh, they've got this fun side to them. Even the cover of the single, like you said, it's almost funny. It's almost slapstick. This
Mm.
hand pounding its way through Eddie's head. It's almost, so it shows that there's sort of a lighthearted side to the band and everything. But
I
beyond
think so.
that, listen to it just so you can say you listen to it. I can't really imagine anybody thinking that this is something that could have ever have come on an Iron Maiden record. Or it's I guess interesting from a trivia perspective, like you said, because it's an Iron Maiden written B-side, and there aren't a ton of those outside of the live versions that land on B-sides. But otherwise, it's a throwaway thing.
There is a funny story about the Nico gibberish that's going on after the song, and as you said, it's studio outtakes. When tapes are rolling, and after the Nico has recorded his parts, is what he says in the talkback mic to Martin
Yeah.
Birch, who is behind the desk. And I think that it's a bit of a, I mean, Iron Maiden, hand on heart, Iron Maiden isn't always funny when they try to be funny. But listening to the studio outtakes of Nico, he's not, he's just himself.
Yeah.
He's not putting on a show. He's just talking to the producer and the guys in the studio, commenting on what he just did, and just you know, just trying to, I mean, just create a good mood, I guess, or something. He didn't have any idea about they should put this on the single. So again, it was a case like where they didn't tell Rod about the inclusion of Sheriff of Huddersfield when they had like a launch party or playback for EMI executives, and Nico said something about that. Okay, is there more now? It should be quiet now. And all of a sudden he hears himself going, we're gonna put this on a CD and stuff like that. And he thought it was so embarrassing. And there were people in the room go, what is this all about? What is going on here? Is this a part of the single that you're going to release? And he tried to explain to these people what actually was going on, while the rest of the band and the producer was like laughing their asses off on the other side of the room. Anyway, Massacre, Thin Lizzy song, of course. I think this is one of the best Maiden covers recorded. I really enjoyed this version. Of course, they recorded it, like Bruce said, I think somewhere, that they recorded because it's a good song, but it was also a tribute to Phil Lynott, who died he died in 86. And they
Mm.
recorded this in the winter of 87, 80, no, 88. So it was a tribute to Phil Lynott. And of course, all of the members of the band are like huge Thin Lizzy fans. So uh, yeah, I think this is a great song. It actually sort of made me check out more of Thin Lizzy when I first heard this one, because Thin Lizzy to me back in '88 was just a name. And if you went to the local record store, you could see albums by Thin Lizzy, but I didn't really have a sort of personal connection to them. But it sort of made me a bit more curious to check out Thin Lizzy. What do you say?
Yeah, oh yeah, this is definitely one of the better covers, if not the best cover. Yeah, it's already a great song and it's already a heavy song. And so them doing it, uh, yeah, they do a great version of it, and it's kind of cool because you can hear the influence of Thin Lizzy on Iron Maiden by them covering the song. It's not really that much of a stretch. It's easy to sort of connect the dots there. So yeah, this is definitely one of their better. And it's a slightly a deep cut from Thin Lizzy. I don't think it's a song that like is this song on Live and
Johnny,
Dangerous?
I don't think I think it's on Johnny the Fox.
Yeah, but I don't think
If
it's
it,
on their live album, Live and Dangerous, is it? I don't know. But I mean, they could have, you know what I mean? Like they could have done Jailbreak. They could have done The Boys Are Back in Town. They could have done Emerald. There could have been a
hmm,
bunch of other songs they could have picked by Thin Lizzy that were maybe a bit more popular. But they went
hmm.
with this one, which I think was pretty cool. But it's sort of here. I'm looking at Live and Dangerous right now. Is it on there? Oh yeah, it is on Live and Dangerous. Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah. It's I like this one. It's definitely it's a cool one, and they don't have to go too far out of their zone here
No,
because it's obvious
exactly.
it's like Thin Lizzy is an influence on them. So yeah,
Mm,
this is definitely one of the cooler covers that they've done.
absolutely. Of course, we have to mention that they also made a video for this song. Julian Doyle, who had worked with members of Monty Python previously as a photographer, made the video, and he was, of course, friend with Graham Chapman from Monty Python. So it's Graham Chapman in the video, and it turned out to be the last sort of, I wouldn't say public appearance, but I think it was the last time he was on film or made a sort of acting job before he passed away in '89. And that sort of makes the video a bit more special. And it's quite unusual for Maiden to make these sort of more storytelling videos. It's quite ambitious, and I think it's really, really, really nice. And of course, me as a Python fan, to have Graham Chapman in a Iron Maiden video is a thing. Okay, should we move on to the Evil That Man Do single?
Yep.
This is a UK gatefold, unusual single. The B sides for Evil That Man Do is recordings of Prowler and Charlotte the Harlot. Both are called Prowler 88 and Charlotte the Harlot 88. And like we said, there are new recordings. They wanted to. It's well known that Steve has never been a huge fan of the sound quality of the first album. So I think they had sort of a plan to re-record songs from the first album with Martin Birch. Uh, but to me, I would say that these versions are kind of pointless. Actually, they don't really add anything to the song Prowler. It's not that they play bad. I mean, Nico is Nico. He does a great job, and everything do their thing to play these two songs. But it doesn't make it. They're not the versions that I would go and listen to. I prefer the 1980 versions with Clive and Dennis Stratton and all of them. And I don't really see the point in recording these. And to be fair, even I don't think the actual sound quality and or rather the mix is as good as for the album Seven Son of a Seven Son. You can sort of hear that it's maybe not rushed, but it's not paid too much attention at least, which also sort of adds to my feeling of pointlessness, so to speak. But yeah, that's what I think about.
Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't work. And if Steve doesn't like the mix of the first record, and if he thinks that this is a better mix, he's wrong. This does not sound as good. They should have they should have just released. I, I don't know if they no, this doesn't work. It doesn't sound right. It sounds loses all of the, and maybe this is what Steve doesn't get about the mix of the first album. The first album has a real kind of simple, raw sound to it. This sounds sort of dated. And I mean, like you said, everybody sounds good. I sort of questioned, and I was going to ask you this, but you answered it already. I wasn't even sure if this was just the original tracks remixed and Bruce just sang over the top of them,
Mm.
because they don't sound they sound very similar to I mean, I didn't A B them, but it just doesn't sound good. I don't like it. It's a waste of time. Things like this never work. I talk about this all the time on my YouTube channel. It doesn't matter that the original mix maybe sonically or from a technical standpoint is maybe not high budget. It doesn't matter. People have spent so much time with those recordings that it's burned into their memory. And when you do this, when you do a re-recording, it never ever works. I can't think of any example of a band re-recording. And in the band's mind, I understand what they're thinking, like, oh, now we've got money and Martin Birch and big studio and better gear, and we can make this is a technically a much better recording. But it isn't. And it's got none of the vibe. It's got none of the atmosphere of the original. And because we've heard the original 800,000 times, when you hear this, you're just kind of like, no, this doesn't work. So, failed experiment. File it under, listen to it once just so you can say you did. And then, I don't know, I never listen to this. I don't like this at all. Doesn't work at all
Mm.
for me. And Bruce doesn't. The only time I really like, and I've said this before, that again, Bruce is technically a better singer than Paul by a long shot. Uh, but where Paul's specialty was that kind of mid-range, giving a switch with your hands in the air, don't you know what to say? You know, that
Mm.
thing when he's doing that. That's his wheelhouse. Now, where Bruce excels is the only time listening to these where I really think like, wow, Bruce sounds better here is now, Charlotte, you told me you loved me true. That part
Mm.
right there, to me, Bruce sounds better at that because that's Bruce's specialty. But when Bruce tries to do that more like half speaking, half singing, thing that Paul does really well. I don't like when Bruce sings that stuff. It's just not Bruce's specialty. Bruce's specialty is the more melodic, type of things. So Bruce doesn't sound right on those spots to me. It just doesn't. It's not his thing. So I don't know. It just the whole thing doesn't work. If you've never heard it, listen to it once, and I don't know. Maybe you'll like it, but I don't know anybody that thinks these are better than the originals.
No, I've I've met quite a few Maiden fans over the years, but I've never heard anyone being in favor of the 1988 versions. And I mean, maybe it says a lot that even if they had some sort of an idea that they should re-record these songs with Martin Birch, they never went through with it anyway. So maybe they recorded these
Yeah,
two songs and sort of felt it themselves that,
yeah.
maybe not. Okay, last single of the Seven Son of a Seven Son album is, of course, the Clairvoyant. Uh, There's another violent Eddie. This one I do like. I think it's so over the top, slapstick, violent that it sort of does it for me. This is a 12-inch version, uh, gatefold with Ross Halfin photographs. Another thing that is a bit unusual, maybe even weird, is that they, on the single version, like on this picture disc, Clairvoyant on the E side on the 7-inch versions are the studio versions, whereas on the CD single and on the 12-inch, it's a live version of the Clairvoyant. Of course, it's recorded by the BBC producer Tony Wilson recorded this, and uh, Martin Birch also get a co-production producing credit. So I guess he was there for the day to oversee the recording himself as well. It's The Prisoner and Heaven Can Wait live recordings from the Monsters of Rock, Donington Park, 20th of August 1988. It's a weird thing because most bands would make their live album when you play to over 100,000 people. Uh, but maybe they had that plan. I mean, it was recorded and broadcasted by the BBC, and maybe they didn't think that, well, now the recording is out there, that they choose not to release it as a
Yeah,
proper double live album. Maybe it was that there were two young fans that got killed that day. They were, as far as I know, sort of trampled to death during the Guns N' Roses concert early in the day. And the aftermath of that was that there was a limit of, I think, 75,000. So as far as I know, Donington 88 is like the biggest crowd that there's ever been on a Monsters of Rock in Donington Park. There's not much to say about the live versions. I mean, all these songs, Clairvoyant, Prisoner, and Heaven Can Wait, are like songs that are popular by the fans. This was, they brought back The Prisoner because it had been out of the set for quite a few years actually. So that was a pleasant return. But I mean, performance wise, it's not much to say about them. It's good, but it's just, to me, it's sort of, because of Iron Maiden and they have released so much live material,
yeah.
it sort of just gets lost in the flood of live songs by Iron Maiden. And yeah, maybe that's the problem for me personally.
Yeah, I think by the time I had heard these, Iron Maiden had already released, I don't think I had heard this in the 80s. It wasn't until probably the 90s or the 2000s when this stuff started to become available. So it's there if you're a collector. And but didn't that show up in the BBC box set or whatever that they put out? Isn't
Mm.
that show on there?
It's in the tin box,
Yeah. So are these
BBC
two
recording.
songs, these versions of those songs, are they on the BBC archives, Eddie box?
I, I, I can't remember actually.
Oh,
Maybe
I've
I should have.
stumped you. I put you. I've been waiting
Okay,
for this
end
moment.
recording, end recording. I'm leaving.
All right, well, there you go. Everybody out there, you can research this yourself if these are the same versions that were on the inside the Eddie box thing there. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of honestly, I don't like. I guess this is a topic for another time. I don't know if I want to open this can of worms, but after live after death, especially around Seventh Son and the way they play live, they play everything too fast. I don't know, I just don't like the way I tend to, when I want to listen to live Iron Maiden, I'm kind of like live after death and earlier. It seems like there's this weird period around somewhere in time in Seventh Son where just everything is just like played way too fast. And I don't know. So, but they're there for historic. And at the time, if you were a fan, way before before the internet and all this stuff, getting your hands on live, having a live recording really meant something. So if you were an Iron Maiden fan, two live songs that weren't on live after death, uh, that meant something.
Yeah,
So
of
it did
course.
have its importance at that time.
Mm.
All right, well, there you go. That wraps up Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Let's see here. We'll give you the usuals. If you're not watching on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel, The Layer of the Alchemist, where you can watch all our podcasts. We do them in video format too. Plus, I talk all kinds of heavy metal and hard rock related topics on there. If you're watching the video, you can also listen to this in podcast form. It's on Apple and Spotify. Matthias has a band, Dead Cosmonaut, and I'm pretty confident that if you like Iron Maiden and just good metal in general, you will like Dead Cosmonaut. They are on all the streaming services. They have CDs and vinyl out. If you Google the name, you'll get all kinds of information on them. And let's see, I've got a podcast, Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast that I do with my buddy Darren, and Kicked in the Teeth, an AC/DC podcast that I do with author and journalist Martin Popoff. So make sure you check all this stuff out for more content. And we will see you at the next one, which is No Prayer for the Dying. Yes, after Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, we've got No Prayer for the Dying. All right, so we'll see you out there somewhere in time.